study more of your word, may we be enabled and excited of how you impact on our lives, of how you speak to us, and how we then are enabled to proclaim your word to those around us, those in our midst and those in the wider society. In your name we pray. Amen.
Dylan, can you open next occasion, if you don't mind? Just, yes, next week. And I hope that things will be better for you. It's nice to have you back, even if you aren't terribly well. Just two introductory things. I've given you the instructions for the epistle class presentations. And secondly, in connection with that, could I have, if that's possible, copies of the epistle that you're doing presentation on? But if you've bound it as the way you have, then please do not refer to it in connection with your presentation. And I'll be able to tell whether you've done that or not.
Yeah.
But if you want to be delivered from temptation, give me the handout. Now, Proverbs. Now, who's not here today? Garth. Okay. I'm talking about three basic genres of proverbs. First of all is your classical proverb, which is just a statement of reality. Now, it doesn't tell you what to think, but it's a thinking aid, an aid for you to examine and make sense of experience. I don't remember, the proverbs are little two-part sentences. Each proverb is a little poem, half verse, a bit like your Japanese haikus, a couplet. They were used to teach young men to read and to write and to think. We had a look at a proverb. Now we get an instruction. An instruction tells people what they need to do in order to get wisdom or to live wisely. And remember, there's always one of the keys to making sense of a proverb is to look for the unexpected thing. There's always something that's going to be a twist, an unexpected twist. Now, what a fool does is looks at it and says, yes, I know, and moves on. Because the mark of a fool is that he thinks or she thinks she knows everything, has nothing to learn, and so will half listen and get some familiar stuff and say, yes, I know, and then switch off to the next thing. Or look at something and say, yes, I know, and move on to the next thing, instead of having a close listen and a close look.
It takes so long to read.
Righto. You watch out. You've got the makings of a first-class fool.
Yep.
Okay, look at this one now. An instruction. Commit or roll over your work to the Lord so that your plans may succeed. David, what does this proverb have to deal with? Something very familiar in our lives.
Your work.
Okay, work. All of us involved in work. We all know all about that, don't we?
Yep.
Okay? Yes. Now, okay, where is the unexpected thing? Yes.
Your plans.
Go on.
It's your plans. And
Your plans, not
God's plans.
God's plans. That's number one. And there's another very funny hitch. Because you would expect a proverb, it's pious stuff, focus on God's plans for your life and then you can be successful. Okay, anything else? There's even a greater surprise than that, but that's the first surprise. It's your. Can I underline that?
Is it your work?
Well, no, that's not at all unexpected, because the work's what we do. You do the study, nobody else does the study for you. You do the exams, nobody else does it. You do the essay, nobody else does the essay.
What I was going to say, for like, if I devote if I wasn't a pastor, I'm not being a pastor, I'm a farmhand, and I devote all my, devote your works to the Lord.
No, you're wrong track. There's something here that's unexpected, unusual. You're not looking at it closely, and you're not thinking in terms of what normally happens, yes?
You're committing your work, but it's your plans that will succeed.
Yep. What's the normal sequence?
You plan this.
You plan, then you work, and then you
That's
successful.
Oh, I see what I mean.
Righto, you can see it's a switcheroo, it's a reversal. You already get it?
Commit your plan.
Okay, I'm eager to push it on. But can you see, if I was a classical Hebrew teacher, I would just let you sweat on it until you got it. And I'd ask questions about it. Okay, no, your work. Okay, well, what's the normal sequence? Do you want to be successful? Every person wants to be successful. What's the secret of success? Planning. Okay, you're getting it. Planning. That's the modern.
That's the modern.
No, it's as old as the hills. Planning, work, success, and then the cliche, the religious cliche, is to get God in on where? Who determines success ultimately?
God.
God. Well, how can we be successful and in such a way, since God is in charge of our life, how can we be successful? Is to get God in where?
In our plans.
In the planning. But this proverb says, commit your work to the Lord so that your plans may succeed. The emphasis in this sequence is not on God giving success or getting God in on your planning, but here. Now, I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to leave you. Sit on that and let that sit with you. Can you see? This is a cliche. Most proverbs, if you look at it closely, take what looks like a cliche. You know what a cliche is?
Oh yeah, everybody knows it.
Everybody knows it. Yes, I know. You know, it's a worn-out saying. It's a worn-out thought. It's a thought that it's so commonplace that it ceases to be a thought anymore. It's just an automatic mental reflex.
Touche.
Yes. Yeah, it's a cliche. Cliche is a French. It comes from French word for something that's worn out or worn down. You don't have to think it anymore because it's a established thought. The question is, why does this proverb tell you, if you're wise, that you should commit what to the Lord? Your work. If you're going to have success.
Well, I've always done my work. I've never had plans, and I've always just done my work because I'm in a grunt. I don't even think about things. If I've needed a job, it's just fallen on my lap, and I've had it.
Okay, and that's maybe the mark of a fool.
But they've been good jobs.
Okay, but it's still the mark of a fool.
What was your question, Zach?
Sorry?
What was your question?
What was which question? I've asked a whole number of questions. The last one, why does this proverb tell you that if you want to be successful with God, now the idea is working with God, why does it tell you that you should commit your work to God rather than your plans to God or your success to God?
I think I might know. Well, your plans, you don't always follow your plans. Like I can plan I'm going to wake up at 6 o'clock. But what's going to happen if like in my work, if I wake up at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
I'm done.
That's right. You're starting to get what's going on. But notice I've only said starting.
Yeah.
Yes, David?
I don't know, I would have suggested that God doesn't want us to just make plans and then sit around and do nothing. He wants us to work.
Well, that's also involved. It's not as if we plan and then God does it for us and then puts success in our lap. But there's a funny sequence, and it's meant to. What it's meant to do is to get you to reflect on the way God is involved in what part of your life.
Your whole life.
Your whole life, and particularly which part of your life? Your working part of your life. Righto, and can you see? And then it raises the question of how do you determine success or not? Because, right, what's real success? Because you can plan, you can work, and it looks as if it's successful, and yet you can fail even when you succeed. There's something between working and success that is determined not by you, but who?
By God.
By God. Okay, I'm going to leave it there because we could spend hours on this one. It's a real puzzler, this one. Now, but what I want you to do is to get you give you some inkling of the way Proverbs are used. And it's totally different to our modern way of learning. Can you see how different it is? It doesn't tell you what to think. There's no one what all modern students want to do is to come this, and what's the meaning of this proverb? 1 and 1 plus equals 2. Okay, it's 2. Then you can move on to the next thing. But a proverb is meant to make you think and reflect on your own experience and make sense of it, and to see that what looks like ordinary things in your life is quite extraordinary, to look closely. There's a lovely proverb that I like, which goes like this. The eyes of the fool are always on the end of the world. The horizon. The point is, a mark of a fool is not to see what?
I would have said the falls.
Okay, well, you see, what's the picture is the horizon. The fool always looks for what's the other, what's there. What's on the other side, and misses out on what?
What is
Right in front of it. Right? What's right in front of your nose is the extraordinary stuff that's right there, and you miss seeing, and you miss therefore out on. This is to get you to listen carefully and to look carefully. Not just at a proverb, but to get the proverb to look back at what? Your own experience, and to make sense of your own experience. Okay, the next proverb, which is a very witty one, and applies to you since you're students, and has to do with study. Why is there payment in the hands of a fool to buy or to get wisdom? The Hebrew word is both buy and get, when he has no heart or no mind.
I don't understand that at all, really.
It's a riddle.
So what has wisdom?
Okay.
Which one is it?
This one here. Why is there payment in the hands of a fool to get wisdom
Oh, it's there.
when he has no heart? Literally in Hebrew, heart is broader than heart. We think heart is the seat of feeling, but heart in Hebrew is the center of the whole person. Personality has to do with mind, mentality. Stephen, what's the picture?
I was just thinking that maybe it means that why is wisdom available to a fool when he has no ability to take it in?
Well, that's the basic point of it. And what's the situation then? You have a student coming to a teacher and expecting the teacher to do what?
Just to give it over.
What?
Just to give over
To
the
give-
wisdom without them having to think for themselves.
You got it. You got it. And the idea is that the more money you pay the teacher, what? The more wisdom you'll get. That wisdom is something that you can buy, but also something that you can acquire second hand. Okay? Now, that's one of the biggest problems in the whole education system. It's also a problem here in seminary. We can... Now, do you realise that there's a big problem in education generally?
Yep.
That most of the important things just can't be taught, they are caught. You catch on. Does that make sense? And you can't catch on until you have the mind for it.
I suppose the only problem with that, though, is that
Yeah,
for
go
us
on.
to rediscover everything in school would take a long time,
That's right.
especially with things like physics or something. You have to rediscover every formula.
Righto. So a good teacher, the wise thing is to go to a teacher. You pay your fees to teach, but then instead of expecting the teacher to do all the work, what you need to do again?
The individual has to.
The individual has to do the work, and a good teacher will try and force the student to do what? To work things out for himself, to think for himself, for herself, to get a scientific mentality, to think scientifically. So, say physics is not something that you can just get directly, or mathematics. To be a good mathematician, you've got to think mathematically. To be a good computer technician, it's not just a matter of following instructions. The rule book. Now, you're a computer person. What's the key to understanding, mastering the working with ET?
Oh, well, sometimes trial and error.
Trial and error, you learn from experience, but then, okay, if you want to teach that to somebody else, do you just say trial and error?
No.
You'd say, have a look on Google and see what everyone else says.
Right, to follow other people, but that's fairly inefficient.
Google it.
You've got to master, you've got to work out the way the thing works. You've got to think computer.
Sappy bit goes in here,
Uh,
information comes out.
and there is a certain way, there is a certain mentality, if you like, and there's a certain system. There's a way in which computers are built up. And if you understand the way a computer works, then you can find your way around a computer and you can find all the stuff. And it's why even guidebooks are not all that much help. You realise that? I mean, you know that, and how difficult it is to teach a person who's got no, comes cold to a computer, okay? Why is there payment? Now, you get the hands of a fool. Now, a fool is not an ignorant person. A fool can be very intelligent. And the biggest fools are sometimes the most intelligent people. They want shortcuts to the getting of wisdom and want the teacher to give them wisdom. That wisdom that they have to acquire for themselves. And what's the important thing if you're going to get wisdom? Is to have a heart, the right character, the right mind, the right mentality.
Okay.
The mentality. So you've got to think computer to make sense of a computer. You've got to think mathematically to make sense of mathematics. You've got to think imaginatively to understand a art. You've got to think musically to make sense of music.
Hebrew makes sense of Hebrew.
You've got to think Hebrew to make sense of Hebrew. If you try and impose English on Hebrew, you'll never make sense of Hebrew, and it'll be hard work. But if you get inside the language and think in a Hebrew way, then Hebrew will click, make sense. That's the shortcut. But it looks like the long cut, actually. It looks like the long way because it's very hard to think Hebrew. It's far easier, at least initially, trying to memorize everything.
Yeah.
But if you memorize everything, you'll never really master Hebrew. If you memorize the whole Bible, you won't master anything. Okay, enough of that. I've spent far too much time on that. Now let's go back to the book itself. The structure of the book. It begins with a prologue. Okay, Garth, can we start off with you? Proverbs 1:1-7, where we get the prologue to the book. Prologue is introduction. Proverbs 1:1-7.
The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for attaining wisdom and discipline, for understanding words of insight, for acquiring the discipline of prudent life, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to the simple, knowledge and direction to the young. Let the wise listen and answer their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables and saying riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline.
Now, what's the mark of a fool? A fool despises wisdom because he despises discipline. Now, if you're going to get wisdom, you've got to be disciplined. There's a certain discipline that's required, a mental discipline. What's the purpose of Proverbs? To attain wisdom and discipline. Discipline thinking. In each subject you study, there's a certain discipline to the subject. There's a discipline to mathematics. There's a discipline to physics. There's a discipline to the study of history. And you don't start off from scratch by yourself, but for understanding words of insight. Who do you go to learn? People who've mastered the discipline, who have insight. And you listen to what they say. It doesn't give it directly, but that'll give you some clue. For acquiring a disciplined and a prudent life. Now, for the getting of wisdom, it's not just that you have a discipline, mental discipline, but for wisdom you need to have a life discipline. A disciplined and sensible, prudent life. If you live an undisciplined, imprudent, that's careless life, you will never discover wisdom. For doing what is right and just and fair, having to do with the formation of your conscience. So through conscience So conscience is more important for the getting of wisdom than intelligence. For giving prudence to the simple. Prudence is sensibility, the opposite of carelessness. Having good judgment. Knowledge and discretion to the young. So this is basically to teach young people the getting of wisdom, but then the next sentence says, even people who are old and wise can still learn from this teaching. Okay, so what's the point of all this collection of proverbs? Is to help both young people and old people to get wisdom or to increase in wisdom. What's the secret for the getting of wisdom? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now that's the axiom. Fear of God, respect for God, and His involvement in your life is the beginning. It's not just the first thing, but is the foundation. So beginning here in the sense of foundation for wisdom. Why is the fear of the Lord the beginning, the foundation of wisdom? Because who teaches you discipline in the school of life? God does. And how does He do it? Through experience, number one. Through experience, using your eyes to make sense of your life, but also using your ears to learn from other people. Dylan said you don't start off from scratch all the time. You'd be stupid to start off from scratch. You use your eyes to make sense of what you experience, but you use your ears also to get all the help you can from other people. And you then bring the two things together. What you see, you use what you hear to make sense of what you see, and you use what you see, you experience, to make sense of what you hear, what's been taught to you. That's the secret of the getting of wisdom. That's the way God teaches wisdom in the school of wisdom. Now, that introduces the first part, the prologue of wisdom, this book, and in this you have the main figure is Dame Wisdom, a woman who embodies wisdom, and it talks about getting wisdom. And Dame Wisdom is contrasted with Ms. Folly. So you get two feminine figures here. We'll talk a bit more about it. Then after that you get 7 books of wisdom. Why 7 books of wisdom? 7 is the perfect number, complete number. Okay, now who's next? Dylan, can you read all these introductions at the beginning of each one? First of all, 10 verse 1, the first part. Okay, is your voice up to it? 10,
Yeah.
10 verse 1.
10 verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon.
That's all I want. So the first collection is the Proverbs of Solomon. Now this indicates that this material comes from the school that Solomon established in Jerusalem for training his courtiers. So it's the Solomon collection of material to be used educationally. Go to 22 and we have a longer introduction. 22, 17 to 21, please, Dylan.
Sayings of the wise. Pay attention and listen to the sayings of the wise. Apply your heart to what I teach, for it is pleasing when you keep them in your heart and have all of them ready on your lips, so that your trust may be in the Lord. I teach you today, even you. Have I not written 30 sayings for you, sayings of counsel and knowledge, teaching you true and reliable words, so that you can give sound answers to him who sent you?
Right, I notice that this is an introduction to 30 sayings of the wise, and we don't know who collected this. It's anonymous. So there are 30 sayings of the wise, and the point of the sayings of the wise is to teach people to trust in the Lord, to guide them in the getting of wisdom in their lives. Then the next collection, 24, 23 to 24, just 24, 23. The beginning there, Dylan again.
These also are sayings of the wise.
Okay, so you get 2 collections of the sayings of the wise. Now there's a very interesting introduction, beginning of the next chapter, 25 verse 1, please, Dylan.
These are more Proverbs of Solomon, copied by the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah.
Okay, Solomon was around about 9060 BC, Hezekiah around about 700 BC. So it's a revised curriculum which was of Proverbs, which was collected by the courtiers, by the educationalists around that Hezekiah appointed. More Proverbs copied by Hezekiah. This is the one clear historical reference in this book. So going back to the time of Hezekiah. The next collection, chapter 30 verse 1.
The sayings of Agur, son of Jakeh, an oracle.
Okay, who was Agur?
Agur.
We haven't a clue. And when was he? We haven't a clue. But this is a collection of the sayings of this guy. Now notice that they don't all go back to Solomon. There's some Solomon sayings, there's some wise men saying, and there's an Agur collection here. And then even more interesting, chapter 31, verse 1.
The sayings of King Lemuel, an oracle his mother taught him.
Who was King Lemuel? No one knows. We don't even know whether he was a Jewish king, whether it's another name for one of the kings of Judah or of Israel, or whether he was a pagan king. But it's weird. But it's what his mother taught him. Now, It's his oracle, but it's what he would learn from his mother. Who are the most important people for the getting of wisdom, the teaching of wisdom? Are your parents?
Generally the old folks.
Well, there's 4 different teachers, humanly speaking. Foundationally, it's your father and your mum. Probably initially, chronologically, mum does the most important teaching of wisdom, and then dad, and then the woman you get involved with determines whether you are a fool or become wise. And then fourthly, it has to do with other figures, usually old people, but mentors, teachers, not teachers in the sense of school teachers, but mentors, what we'd now call mentors, older people who play a kind of father or mother role in your life.
Grandparents.
Yep, or it can be anybody. It can be anybody. And then it can even be, yes, I was going to say. And then the book of Proverbs ends with an acrostic poem. Now, acrostic poem is a poem that's composed around the letters of the alphabet. So the first verse here is the Aleph verse, the second one is the Beth verse. And so you go through an acrostic poem in praise of the good wife, the spunky wife, the wife of substance. Now, why does this end with a poem in praise? Why does the book of Proverbs end with a poem in praise of a good wife? Well, it's because your wife, and that assumes that you get married,
You're a bloke.
and when this was composed, there were no girls in Solomon's school, so it's just one sex school. So it has to do with teaching of men, young men. Your wife will be the most important teacher of wisdom, and she teaches wisdom in a strange way. And if you want to look at the poem, you get some idea of how a good wife teaches wisdom to her husband. Very strange book, and it busts a lot of the modern cliches of all sorts of stuff here. And it touches on what is missing most in modern education and modern life, which is wisdom. We have a lot of emphasis on knowledge, science, but it seems that the more knowledge we have, the less wisdom we have in our society. Now, let's have a look at the themes of this book. Okay, let's go to Proverbs 3, 13 to 20, please, Stephen. First theme. And it's very hard to... Look, there's so much material here that it's hard to give you even a flavour of what the main themes are, but I'll do my best. Wisdom has to do with fitting in, not just with other people, but in God's ordering of creation. It presupposes that God has created the world, and He's created an orderly world. Stephen, can you read?
Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, the man who gains understanding. For she is more profitable than silver, and yields better returns than gold.
Notice she here, the picture of wisdom is a woman. So woman wisdom here. Wisdom is the most precious thing you'll ever get. Keep going. Why is she so precious?
She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honour. Her ways are pleasant ways, and her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Those who lay hold of her will be blessed. By wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding He set the heavens in place. By His knowledge the deeps were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew.
So God created the world not according to, not with scientific laws, but with wisdom. And He created the world as a home, a habitat for the life of human beings and animals and plants. And he provided everything that was necessary for life on earth. So the picture is of God as a master builder creating the world as a house for people to live in. He not only created in wisdom, but he supplies rain, which keeps people alive in the house that he's created. And in this house then you have wisdom living, and wisdom is the one who gives people life. So if you get wisdom, which is the most precious thing, you'll have a full, rich life. But if you despise wisdom, you'll commit suicide. You reject life. Notice the way that wisdom here is described as the tree of life. Why is everybody blessed who gets hold of this tree? Remember the tree in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life? This is the picture here. If you take hold of this tree, if you embrace this tree, you have life. If you don't take hold of this, you will commit suicide. That's the picture. Next passage, Tony, the destructiveness of folly, and I've already touched on this. 1:20 to 33. If wisdom is connected with God's ordering, if wisdom is the power by which God, or no, if God orders and gives life in the world that he's ordered through wisdom, then to reject wisdom is to commit suicide. Here you get wisdom speaking.
Wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public squares. At the head of the noisy street she cries out. In the gateways of the city she makes her speech.
Just pause there. Where is the place that wisdom teaches? It's not hidden away in a classroom, but she is there teaching and calling people to her out in public. It's the greater world. She's there available to everybody. And what's her word to everybody who passes by in the public domain, out there in the world? So it's not just God's people, it's not just Christians that wisdom addresses, it's everybody. Okay, Tony, go on.
You simple ones, love your simple ways. How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge?
Okay, now she addresses three groups of people. First of all, you get simple ones. This is gullible, naive, ignorant young people. Okay, just silly people. And it's simple ones are people who are naive and therefore just blunder into things. But the next stage, you start off on the way of folly by being simple, silly. I think silly is the best word in English. You silly ones. You know, a silly person is not necessarily an evil person or a foolish person, it's just silly. The next stage of after silliness comes mockery. Okay, a person then becomes a mocker, a scoffer, in Australian terms, a knocker. Okay, you not only are silly, but you embrace silliness, and it becomes important, and you knock anybody who does the right thing. So you mock what's right, you knock what's right, you ridicule what's right, in order to defend your own silliness. It happens in you can see this happening in peer groups, in every teenage context. What's the next stage, however? So you go from silliness to knocking, scoffing, mockery, and then you end up becoming a fool.
Hating knowledge.
With hating knowledge, because it's not just that you are ignorant and foolish, but you deliberately reject insight, knowledge, wisdom, and make a decision to embrace what's wrong.
Isn't knowledge the intelligence kind?
No, here a knowledge is just insight, understanding.
So knowledge is part of wisdom.
Knowledge is part of wisdom in Proverbs. Okay, keep on going, Tony. So she addresses all three people who are on the first step to the road to folly, as well as those who are right in the middle of it, the knockers, and then the inveterate fools. Keep going, Tony.
If you had responded to my rebuke, I would have poured out my heart to you and made my thoughts known to you.
Just stop there. So first of all, wisdom encounters these three groups by rebuking them. What's rebuking them?
Telling them off.
Telling them off. Saying, you're stupid, you're going the wrong way, just stop doing what you're doing. Rebuking. She said, if you had responded to my rebuke, I would have poured out my heart to you. Now that's a wrong translation. In Hebrew is I would have poured out my spirit. The spirit of wisdom. So she offers to give her spirit to fools. Spirit has to do with power. The power to resist evil, the power to resist stupidity. And she would have made her thoughts known to them, her way of thinking. So how does wisdom confront people? She confronts them both with a stick and a carrot. The stick, which is the rebuke, the carrot, which is the promise of her spirit and the promise of her way of thinking. Keep going, Tony.
But since you rejected me when I called, and no one gave heed when I stretched out my hand, since you ignored all my advice and would not accept my rebuke, I in turn will laugh at your disaster. I will mock when calamity overtakes you.
Now these mock at wisdom, so wisdom turns the tables on them. Why? Keep going.
When calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster sweeps you over like a whirlwind, when distress and trouble overwhelm you, then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will look for me, but will not find me. Since they hated knowledge
They hated knowledge? They didn't want to know?
and did not choose to fear the Lord, since they would not accept my advice and spurn my rebuke, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruits of their schemes. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of the fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm.
So you get a contrast here between those who listen to wisdom and live a safe life, a good life, and those who refuse to listen to wisdom and commit suicide. They, not quite literally, but it can be that. It can eventually lead to losing your life, but it is losing vitality, losing what's important in life, vitality. Yes, David?
So that was obviously wisdom saying that she would laugh at people who didn't accept their advice when calamity overtakes them. And,
Yes.
Yeah, not God saying that.
It's wisdom saying here, yeah. And the picture is just that she turns tables on them. No, they laugh at her, scoff her, and then when they get the consequences of their actions, she will try and bring them to their senses by laughing at them. Right? Can you get the thing? And laughing is not necessarily negative. Righto. So,
Sounds pretty negative.
well, it is negative because fools, people who are foolish and set in folly, require pretty tough treatment to bring them to their senses. Because what usually happens is that there's a funny kind of spiral, because wisdom has to do with listening. Okay, people refuse to listen, and the more they suffer from the consequences of their own refusal to listen, the more adamant they are in refusing to listen. It becomes more and more set. And by the way, that's the biggest problem all of us have, is a hearing problem, not a seeing problem. We have seeing problems. We don't see the way things are, but the root of that lies that we don't really listen to anybody except ourselves. That's original sin. Next, wisdom is the product of the fear of the Lord and His management, His involvement in our lives. Who's next? I've got Joshua. Can you read? We've read 1 verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Let's go to chapter 3, 3 to 8, and then 11 to 12.
Do not let loyalty and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favour and good repute in the sight of God and of people.
But there's something unexpected here in verse 3. I would have expected the teacher to say, don't you ever give up being loyal and faithful. But it says, do not let love and faithfulness leave you. Whose love? Whose faithfulness? It's to start off with the love, the faithfulness of other people, and the love and faithfulness of God. That's the beginning of the getting of wisdom. Holding on to God, the gospel, God's love, God's faithfulness, the love of the people around you, their faithfulness to you. And then what comes out of this? What's the next stage?
Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths.
Just verse 6, one little point there. Hebrew doesn't say acknowledge Him, but in all your ways know Him, discover Him, be intimate with Him, recognize Him. Keep going.
Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be a healing for your flesh and a refreshment for your body.
Verse 9 and 10.
9 and 10. Honour the Lord with your substance and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine.
Right, what's the fear of the Lord? These instructions here has to do with what's meant by fearing the Lord. Number one, it means focusing on God's love, God's faithfulness. It's not fearing somebody who's evil, but being afraid of losing God's love, God's faithfulness. Do you know who I fear most in my life?
Your wife.
Yeah, do you know why? It's not that I'm scared of her. I fear losing her and her love. So true fear of the Lord doesn't begin with fear of God's punishment, but it begins with focusing on, holding on to love, faithfulness. And that leads then to trusting in God with all your heart and not leaning on your own understanding. So the fear of God has to do with trusting in God, respecting God's presence, His management, and knowing God at every point in your life, that God is with you, God is travelling with you in life, and that He's the one who makes your paths straight. Thirdly, the fear of the Lord means not being wise in your own eyes. What does that mean? Well, it means not thinking that you know everything. But important thing is, particularly in the area of your conscience, if you're going to fear God, you will shun evil and you'll love what is good. So it has to do with morality, living morally. Just let me finish this. And the result of that is that you will have health. You'll experience health. A healthy conscience, which leads to a healthy body, a healthy mind, everything else. And then lastly, honouring God by bringing the offerings that He requires in worship of Him. So what does fearing God mean? Number one, it means holding on to God's love, God's faithfulness. Number two, it means trusting in God. Number three, it means shunning evil, avoiding evil. Number four, it means worshipping God in the way that He required. Yes, David?
Oh yeah, it's my question actually.
Okay, but then last of all comes where I would have expected the first thing to be. Read the last two verses, 11 to 12.
My child, do not despise the Lord's discipline, or be weary of his reproof. For the Lord reproves the one he loves, as a father, the son in whom he delights.
Now, my child in Hebrew is my son. The picture is the teacher is the father and the son is the student. So my student, don't despise, I would have expected the teacher to say, don't despise my discipline. But it says, don't despise God's discipline. How do you learn wisdom? You learn wisdom in the school of life with God's discipline. What's God's discipline? When you do something wrong, He will use the stick on you. He will use His tongue, the rod of His tongue, the stick of His tongue. He will reprove you, but He will also discipline you with a stick. What's the stick? What's God's stick?
The people around.
The people around you. That's the consequences of your actions. What God normally does is stops you suffering the consequence of your action. But if you refuse to listen to His telling you off in your conscience or through other people, then what will God do? He will let you suffer the consequences of your actions. Now, the problem is that when God lets us suffer the consequences of our action, we feel that God doesn't love us. But that's silly. You have two children, different fathers. You have one child whose father never disciplines them, and then you have another child whose father disciplines them. Which of the two loves the child?
One who disciplines.
Righto. And you know that from experience. Because a father who refuses to discipline a child, in fact, is indifferent to that child, doesn't care about that child, and that child will do things to provoke the father, tell him, I hate you, or deliberately do something wrong. Why? To find out whether the father really loves him enough to step in and discipline him. Now, that's one of the funny things about child behaviour that all of you, if you look back in your own teen years, you would have experienced in some way. Two things here. Wisdom is, first of all, the product of the fear of the Lord, which is respect for God and His management of our life. And secondly, we learn wisdom from instruction and experience in the school of life. God's instruction and the instruction of other people and the instruction of through what happens to us. Tony?
I keep hearing it's foundational.
It's absolutely foundational, yes. Notice that the axiom of wisdom is the fear of the Lord is the beginning, the foundation for wisdom. Unless you fear God, and don't see fear God in a negative sense, but fear God in a positive sense. Unless you respect God, unless you count on God, rely on God, factor in God, take God seriously, listen to God, all that, first commandment stuff, you will never ever become wise. The fear of the Lord is the foundation for wisdom. Now, the problem is it's past. We better have a break. Can we not have it too long? Yes, otherwise it'll go too long and too late. Let's have a little break now.